medical school, which is true. They don't teach doctors a lot of things in medical school, and the big N that they don't teach them is nutrition. They know nothing about nutrition. So we're getting such incorrect advice in schools where the dairy industry spends $500 million a year putting those big posters in schools and sending instructors in to teach them that they got to eat milk or their bones are going to break. But it's nonsense. Walter Willett at Harvard University, with his 82,000 nurse study, has determined that women who drank a lot of milk and ate a lot of cheese as teenagers develop higher rates of pelvic fractures than people who don't drink milk. So it's just the opposite of what the dairy industry is lying and brainwashing us to believe.
Let's talk about osteoporosis, because that's a part of really what you're talking about. What is the stance for osteoporosis?
Well, we find that when people eat too much dietary protein, they are creating an acid condition in their blood, which they have to neutralize, and they do so by leaching calcium from their bones. I spent some time with the lead researcher in the largest heart study in American history. It's called the Framingham Heart Study. His name is William Castelli. And I complimented him on his study. For 30 years it's been going, and 30 years ago he demonstrated that saturated fat was the key to heart disease. And then 20 years ago, he demonstrated that cholesterol was the key to heart disease. So I said to him, Dr. Castelli, what's the key to heart disease today? What is the leading edge? What are scientists looking at? And he didn't hesitate. He said, homocysteine. And I said, oh, homocysteine, I know that word. And I said, well, where do we get homocysteine from? And he said, well, you make it in your liver. And then I said, how? And at that point, he didn't know. And I said, would you mind respectfully if I tell you how? And then I repeated to him there were 28 amino acids. 2 of the 28 are different than the other 26, and that they have as their center atom sulfur. They're methionine and cysteine. And your body, when it has lots of methionine and cysteine, it produces homocysteine, which Dr. Castelli has found is the key to heart disease. People with high levels of homocysteine have the most strokes and the most heart events. So homocysteine, the key to heart disease, where do you get it from? I analyzed different protein. And the worst food after dairy that you can eat are eggs. And we all know the rotten egg smell. We remember it from high school chemistry class. You don't want the rotten egg smell infusing into every cell of your body. As a matter of fact, there was a comical approach on the TV series Sex and the City, where one of the women had a boyfriend who was perfect except for one thing. His body essence stunk, and she couldn't stand the smell. And she couldn't be with him because of that. He was a chicken eater, and that's what it's all about. We eat too much chicken. The Japanese used to call us the butter people because they could smell the rancid butter on our bodies, putrefying. And you know what? Vegans, we come from another planet, definitely from the planet Vega, and it's like a secret handshake. We know who's really vegan and who's not because we can smell. We smell this metallic, offensive smell come, and it's hard for me to be around people who have that smell, who are the chicken eaters and the egg eaters and the dairy eaters. And it's something vegans know because our senses are finely attuned. I'm not making this up. Ask any vegan, they'll tell you.
Where do you get your calcium?
Well, your food is loaded with calcium. Whoever decided to put 33 milligrams of calcium in a 100-gram portion, about 3.5 ounces of human breast milk. Now, remember this number, 33. Because potato chips have 40 milligrams. Beans have 50 milligrams. Chickpeas have 150 milligrams. Your food's loaded with calcium. In order to absorb 1 milligram of calcium, you need an equal milligram of magnesium. Right. And magnesium is the center atom of chlorophyll. Do you know that chlorophyll and the protein in our blood, hemoglobin, are almost identical?
No.
It's remarkable, yeah. The center atom of the hemoglobin in our blood is iron-rich blood. And in chlorophyll, it's magnesium. Well, you eat the dark green leafy vegetables, you're going to get much more calcium absorbed into your body than you will by drinking milk. Milk may have 118 milligrams, cow's milk, where human breast milk has 33. It may have 118 milligrams of calcium, so there's a lot of calcium. But it only has 18 milligrams of magnesium, and since it's a 1-to-1 proportion, you only absorb the 18. So children who are nursing, you don't need that much calcium to build bones. There are hundreds of events that are required to build bones. And calcium is not the key. There are many different things that happen. It's a very dynamic process, and it doesn't happen in one day. But in the presence of so much protein, we find that people actually get a negative calcium balance because of that acid condition from the methionine and cysteine. And it sounds complicated, it sounds complex, but it's actually rather very simple. Your body, you're putting gasoline in your car, you're putting fuel in your body, and your body wants an easy job of digesting it. You don't want to pollute the organs in your body or the blood. You want the cleanest fuel you can get. You want something that your body can digest easily while you sleep, so if you work out hard, you can repair the muscles that you tear while lifting weights. And that's why I and other vegans like Dr. Douglas Graham, who's an athlete, like Brendan Brazier, who is a triathlete, like Dave Scott, who won the Ironman triathlon in Hawaii 5 times as a vegan, because we have the ability to heal and recover better.
That totally flies in the face of everything we've been taught, really.
Of course it does.
Everything about the protein thing, the whole protein paradigm then is off.
It's completely off. And, you know, a few years ago, we were told to eat 1,000 milligrams a day of calcium. And suddenly the number changed to 1,200. At that time, I was very active with the FDA and USDA. I knew a lot of people there. So when the government changed the standard from 1,000 to 1,200, I wanted to know why. I called people I knew at the FDA, and I said, why did you change it? And I was told, we didn't change it. The USDA changed it. So I called people I knew at the USDA. Why did you change it? We didn't change it. The FDA changed it. So nobody knew who changed it. But I traced it down to who changed it. It was the National Science Foundation, and the members of the committee who changed it were people who worked for the dairy industry, people like Dale Bauman, Michael Daugaday, Greg Miller. See, I name names, and that's why they don't want to debate me. I have an open invitation to the dairy industry. So long as it's televised live, I will debate any 10 people at one time. 10 to 1 of your top scientists, doctors, whatever, marketing people. And I'll tell you something, Kim, I will turn them into large pieces of Swiss cheese with big holes.
You're very courageous.
It's something that has to be done, but they learned the smartest thing to do is ignore and avoid. They've made the mistake of being on TV too many times with me, and I make them look silly because I can cite the references and I can give you the logic and the scientific research behind it.
I think it's great that they talk to you, though. Some of them talk to you from different organizations, right? The FDA?
Some of them do, and we actually share secrets together. And I have some very decent friends in the dairy industry and some very bitter enemies. But the bottom line is that these are not evil people for the most part. There are some pretty evil people out there, but FDA, USDA, dairy industry, imagine they're living on a farm 4 or 5 generations, same family, same farm, and suddenly they're being told that the product they thought was wonderful is awful? So how are they going to feel? Pretty lousy. That's why my notmilk.com site is something that's taboo to them. And they look. I have many people who read my email, and FBI has become a good friend because one day somebody with plastique was arrested on the way to get me. I see my future. It's going to be a dairy farmer with a shotgun with an IQ of 80. But for the most part, the industry is not bad. I found Richard Nixon on March 23rd, 1971. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for a Watergate tape, and I got it. And
wow.
Richard Nixon was visited by 3 members of the dairy industry bearing $3 million cash in 2 duffel bags. And it's recorded right on the tape. And John Connolly is there. He walks in and afterwards, and he says, these men are militant, they're adamant, they're going to place a lot of money into political activities. This is just a business deal. And $3 million cash Nixon was given. See, we never proved Nixon when he said, I am not a crook. He was asked that question, how about the milk fund? And he said, well, I'm not a crook. You know, the Democrats are trying to raise the price of milk. The day after he got that $3 million cash at a cabinet session, he raised the price of milk in America 15 cents. And it may not sound like a lot, but it translated into a $300 million increase for the dairy industry. 1 week earlier, the Secretary of Agriculture, Cliff Harden, said there's not going to be an increase that year because we have an enormous surplus. So you see a lot of political considerations. You see people who work for the dairy industry work on the highest levels at the USDA and the FDA and on the committees that make the food pyramid. I became one of 27 people to testify at the food pyramid hearings where they decide and recommend what kids should eat in school. And the person running the show, Dr. Eileen Kennedy, who was an undersecretary, said, we want to know your name, we want to know your education, we want to know your organization, we want to know who funds you. So when it became my turn, I played to the cameras, I pointed my finger at her, and I said, Dr. Kennedy, the American people want to know who funds you. And everyone went, ooh, ooh,